projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا عزيز يا كريم. أما بعد. So we begin with the praise of Allah Azza wa Jalla by sending peace and blessings and salutations upon His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and upon his family and his companions. It's nice to see that many of the brothers who had been attending Friday night reflections before have started to come back. Bihamdillah wa fadlih, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah Azza wa Jalla has brought us together to continue these Friday night reflections. And the topic, inshallah ta'ala, for this evening, inshallah, is a topic which I get asked about from time to time, and it's something that takes a long time to explain. So rather than explain to lots of different people, I thought it would be beneficial if we were to discuss it this evening, inshallah. And this is the topic of our children's education. And we want to begin, first of all, by talking about the importance of the topic, and then talking about what the problem is, or the problems are, and then talking about what the solution might be. So we begin by talking about why this issue is important. There are no doubt that the children are a huge blessing from Allah Azza wa Jalla, and that they are also a huge responsibility and a huge opportunity. So I mentioned 3 words that relate to our children. They are a huge blessing, they are a huge responsibility, and they are a huge opportunity. As for them being a huge blessing, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them in the Quran alongside the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon people. And that our children are a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just to give you one example, the example of what Nuh alayhi salam said to his people, فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. Nuh said, I said to them, seek the forgiveness of your Lord. Indeed, He is the one who is always forgiving. He will send down rain from the sky, and He will give you an increase in wealth and in children, and He will bestow upon you gardens and bestow upon you rivers. Notice all of these huge blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, and children are mentioned among them. Children are a huge blessing. Children are a huge responsibility. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Every single one of you is a shepherd, and every one of you will be asked about their flock. So children are a blessing. They're an opportunity for us as individuals, and they're an opportunity for the ummah at large. As for them being an opportunity for us as individuals, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمَ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. If or when the child of Adam dies, the children of Adam, the children of Adam dies, his deeds cease except for three things. And among those three things were وَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ, a pious child that makes dua for him. So our children are a huge investment. And I just want you to reflect on how much money and time and effort and hardship and emotional distress you go through during your child's life. You spend a huge amount of your time. You spend an absolutely huge amount of your energy, a huge amount of your problems come from things related to your children. Allah Azza wa Jalla described the wealth and the children in Shahad as a fitna. إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. All of this energy and all of this effort and all of this time for the sake of what? What do you hope to achieve from it? Ultimately, what you hope to achieve, or among the things you hope to achieve, or whether to solve a pious child that will continue my good deeds after I die. People want to have children because they want to have a legacy, they want to leave something behind. If they're thinking in terms of the dunya, they want to leave behind their name and their lineage and their family and their traditions. But if they're thinking in terms of the akhirah, they want to leave behind good deeds that will continue. Sadaqah jariyah that will continue. As for the being an opportunity for your ummah, I'll just illustrate this with one story. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, on his return from Ta'if, when the people rejected him, and they threw stones at him, and they called him names, he was approached by the angel of the mountains, who told him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him permission that he was to be given a choice. If he wished, the angel of the mountains would take the mountains surrounding Makkah and crush the city of Makkah and kill all of the people within, and that he would not be blamed for it. And if he wished, he can overlook the harms that came from it. So what did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam choose? He chose not to destroy the people of Makkah. And he said, perhaps Allah will take from their offspring a people who will worship Allah Azza wa Jalla alone. Or a people who will say, La ilaha illallah. Imagine this. The whole of the city rejects the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They have so much corruption and worship of idols. But the hope is that something better will come from their children. And therefore your children are an opportunity for the future of the world, for the future of the ummah, for the future of Islam, even if you are deficient. There is a hope that your children will be able to achieve something more than that which you achieve. So now we know why it's so important to take care of our children. We know that we're going to be asked on the day of judgment. None of us will be able to leave that place until we are asked about our responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is our children. So if we have all of these things to bear in mind, then there's no doubt that our children have a particular place of importance in our lives, especially when we think Like when you invest in a business, it can make you millions and it can lose you a large amount of money too. So your children, like this investment, they can gain you a lot. They can gain you so many good deeds that a person comes on the day of judgment and he says to Allah, where did all of this come from? And he's told that all of this came from his child. The good deeds that his child did, the dua that his children made for him, raised his rank in Jannah to such a degree that he sees all of these good deeds and he doesn't know where they come from. But likewise, the corruption of a person's children and the problems that they can cause can take a person far away from Islam. So it's extremely important that we deal with the topic of our children. And I've talked about it before. We've talked about tarbiyah, we've talked about other issues. But what we want to talk about today is the topic of education. Because education plays a massive role in the success of this investment that we make in our children versus the failure of it. A huge part of that is down to education. Massive part of that is down to our children's education. And there are two major problems that I want to address tonight that most people ask about. A lot of people say, how do we reconcile between the desire for us to have pious and upright children and the need for our children to have an education in terms of the world we live? Lots of people ask this question. But what we want to address today are two of the major problems that people are suffering with their children's education today. And among them, I feel that they are the biggest problems that we face. And we face them regardless of the type of school that our children go to. Although some schools are worse than others and some schools are better than others. And some systems are worse than others and some systems are better than others. These two problems are the heart of the issue. They are first of all the content and secondly the environment. So the content of what our children learn. That is dealing with issues in school where they learn things that are incompatible with Islam or things that will harm them in their religion. The content. And this could be learning about evolution. This could be learning about issues of intimacy at a young age, which is obviously a problem in many Western countries where they teach this to very young children. It could be learning about other religions. It could be learning things that distract them from the religion. Learning the habit of putting the religion second and the dunya first. All of these are problems with the content of what our children learn. And the second problem that we have is the environment. And that is that even if the content is correct, so we send our children to a good Islamic school that doesn't teach them immorality, and it doesn't teach them shirk, and it doesn't teach them all of these sort of false disbelief and atheism content, content from atheism and the things that lead to atheism. But still you have to deal with the environment. And even if your children are in the best Islamic school in the world, they still have other children around them. They're still surrounded by other people, and those other people influence your children. Your teachers influence, or the children's teachers influence them. The children's friends influence them. The environment they are in influences them. So we have a problem of content, we have a problem of environment. This problem is greater or lesser in different systems, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the different systems that exist for teaching the children, sort of Islamic schools, homeschooling. We're going to talk about all these things tonight, we need the right time. But one way or another, you have to deal with these problems in your child's life. You have to deal with the problem of the environment, you have to deal with the problem of the content that your child gets, to a greater or a lesser degree. Yes, there are some schools better than others. But I want to start with a warning to the parents. So many parents are living in a state of ghafla, a state of complete unawareness about what their children are exposed to and what their children learn and what their children do. They think because they send their children to a good Islamic school, their children spend all day just doing things that are pleasing to Allah. And their friends are all devout Muslims. I'm going to dispel this notion. We at Kalima, Islamic Center, work with children who come from some of the best Islamic schools in the UAE. And we have seen from them what you would not see from some children in inner city state schools in the United Kingdom. In terms of some of the haram that they are involved in, and some of these kids are going to good Islamic schools. I'm not going to mention the schools because there's no benefit in that. But I'm going to tell you the best of the best Islamic schools in the UAE. And we know that these kids are into drugs and alcohol and women and watching pornography and so on and so on. And I'm not talking about 15, 16-year-olds. I'm talking about young kids from the age of 10 years old, 11 years old. Wallahi, just 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, I came across this situation from a kid who's probably 12 years old and going to one of the best Islamic schools in the UAE. And I'm not going to mention too much about it except to say that that particular child was looking at extremely immoral content on his school iPad, laptop, tablet that he was given. We cannot live in this state of ghafla, of being so unaware that because I sent my child to a really good Islamic school, and that's the end of it. Reality is that children are children, and the shaitan is not willing to leave you or your family. Just because you go to a good Islamic school doesn't mean your kids are not being exposed all of the time to haram. And I'm talking about a young age. We see kids 10 years old, 9 years old, 11 years old. Allah only knows what they're doing at 15. And these are kids going to the best Islamic schools. What do you think about the kids who are going to those schools which have a strong atheist agenda? And there are schools, let's be honest. There are schools in the UAE whose primary purpose is to spread the message of atheism and kufr and ilhad. And we've seen them with our own eyes. Some of these top American schools, top British schools, then even the founders admit that they founded them for the sake of taking these children away from this backward religion that they follow and bringing them into modern life. Wake up. This is the real world. In Dubai, in the last 6 months, I have had to deal with somewhere between 5 and 10 cases of children who have become atheists. They have left their religion, they've gone to their parents and said, Mom and Dad, I don't believe in Allah and I'm not a Muslim anymore. In Dubai, not in Britain, not in the US, not in Canada, in Dubai. And I'm not talking about 18, 19-year-olds. 15, 16 years old. 15, 16 years old. Children who are coming and saying, I'm not a Muslim anymore. So we need to wake up. We need to stop living in this dreamland that some Muslims live in, where everybody who says La ilaha illallah dies from La ilaha illallah, everything is rosy and wonderful, and everyone just learns Islam and reads Quran and nobody does anything haram. That's not the real world. issue, it can affect this investment. It can affect this open dream that we have of our children growing up to be a legacy for ourselves and for the Ummah. And we need to recognize the problem. The problem comes from two things: the content and the environment. And I'm going to start with a general solution before I start with a specific solution, because this is from the ways that the scholars of Islam, generally, when our scholars, our teachers used to teach us things, we would start with something general and then they would go to something specific. So I'm going to tell you the general solution to the problem of our children's education. The general solution is really simple, and it's two words only. Take control. Two words. Take control. Stop outsourcing your children's life to someone else. Stop outsourcing your children's tarbiyah to a maid. Stop outsourcing your children's education to their teacher at school. And take all of the reins yourself and take responsibility yourself. Now that doesn't mean taking your children out of school, because I'm going to talk about homeschooling later on, because not everybody can take their children out of school. But it means taking control. Too many people, we outsource our children's education, first of all, to the shaitan via the television, and YouTube, and the internet. So we put our children like a babysitter, we switch on the TV, and we sit our children in front of the TV, and we allow the television to educate our children about what is halal and what is haram, about what is fun and what is not. We outsource our children's education to the television or the internet or whatever it is, the tablet or whatever it is. Everything your child picks up. And when do you think is the most dangerous time? How many of you in your head are thinking, well, the most dangerous time is when they're at college, because that's when they meet the girls? La Allah. The most dangerous time in your child's life are the early years. The time in the Havana, the time in the nursery, when your child is 2 years old, or 3 years old, or 4 years old. By the time they reach 5 years old, huge percentages of their outlook on life and their desires and their hopes and dreams and everything is formed already. So the first mistake we make is not at 5 years old. The first mistake we make is when we put our children in front of the TV at 2 years old. That's the first mistake we make. And that's the biggest loss at that time. Because those are the is that we stop outsourcing our children's education to other people and we take control. So we start asking, like you know someone when you're at work and they give you responsibility for a project, every last detail you want to know where it's done, who's doing it, how is it done, what happened, who authorized it, and you start treating your children's education the same way. Every day you want to know what did you do in school, what did you learn, what are you teaching my kids, which alphabet, which method, are you teaching them with machines, are you using music, are you using songs, do you have pictures in the nursery? You want to know every last detail because now you want to be in control. What your children did during the day, you sit down with your children like you sit down with your employees. How many of your supervisors at work, you sit down with your employee on a regular basis, you say to them, what have you achieved? How are you progressing on this target? What did you do with this? How did you overcome this? You take control. And this is what you need to do with regards to your children's education. Take control. Know the details. What books? What are in them? What stories? What are the kids doing? What are they experiencing? And to do this, you have to have something very, very important. And that is you have to have a friendship with your children. Because children, they talk to their friends. And if you can be like a friend to your child, they'll talk to you. They'll tell you about what they experience in school. Because we often laugh when we do interviews for children and carrying our programs, we say, how is your school? And they say, it's really good. We say, what do you do? They say, just Islamic things. And we say, what do you study? And they're like, Quran. What do you do in your spare time? I like to read the Quran. Do you play video games? Video games, what are they? Well, this is what we get from the children. 2 weeks later, it's a different story. You have to break through that barrier of that false impression your children give by rewarding them for telling you the truth, not telling you what you want to hear. Too many people, they like to teach their children to tell them what they want to hear. Did you pray today? Yes. Because you want to hear it and you teach your children very good, take this. But instead what we want to encourage our children to do, if they didn't pray, did you pray today? Yes. Are you sure you prayed today? I'm not going to be angry if you didn't, just tell me the truth. Okay, I missed it. Okay, why did you miss it? I was playing with my friends. Okay, so can we do something to stop this happening again? Inshallah. Okay, I'm still going to give you that present that I promised you. Because you were honest with me and you told me the truth. I'm not saying you shouldn't get angry if your child misses over, of course you should. But there's a greater benefit to be had here, there's a greater master. That is, you've got to teach your children that it's okay to tell you the truth. And once you do that, you build that relationship with your kids, and it's okay to tell me what happened. It's okay to tell me if something wrong went on. It's okay if you didn't do the right thing. We can work on it, but just tell me the truth. And this way you develop that relationship where you can really exercise some influence over the body. So now we're going to come back to the detailed answer. We have two really big problems. We have the problem of the content, we have the problem of the environment. We're going to deal with the content first. I personally believe there are lots of problems with content. One of them is maybe you can say, my school is not teaching my children anything about Islam. They teach them, mashallah, mathematics and science and physics and everything. But when it comes to Islam, they get one lesson a week. It's not enough. Another problem with content would be that maybe you're not happy with the quality of the Islamic content. Or they're teaching something haram, or something immoral, or something which contradicts Islam. I believe the solution to this problem of is essentially one solution when it has varying degrees of severity or varying degrees of implementation. The solution is you have to set your own curriculum for your child to follow. You have to set your own curriculum for your child to follow. And at the same time, you have to closely challenge anything which is not Islamic in the curriculum that you have no control over. So if we look at the best example of this, the best example of this is homeschool. Why? Because in homeschooling, you set 100% of the curriculum yourself, or 99% or 95% according to how great you are. You set a huge amount of the curriculum yourself. But I think that this is not just for people who homeschool their kids. I think everybody needs to go and sit down and say, okay, forget what my school is teaching my child. What do I want to teach my child? Islamically, in the dunya, maybe you've got a skill you want to pass on to your child. Maybe you think there's a great market in IT security coming up in the next 25 years and I really want my child to learn that and the school is not going to teach them. Maybe you just want to teach them about the deen. But you've got to stop saying that my syllabus, my school, American curriculum, school in Sharjah, they're the ones who are setting what my children learn. Forget it. Who cares what they're teaching your children? Now let's take control for yourself. Put a curriculum for yourself and say, okay, fair enough, the school is the school, I can't change that. I can maybe move them around, I can look for a school that's close to what I teach, but ultimately it's never going to be perfect. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my own curriculum for my child to follow. And I'm going to start taking an effort to teach them what is in that curriculum. And Islam is the most important example of that. There's no school that I know of here that has a good quality Islamic curriculum for children that I would say is adequate. Some of them are good, like 70%, 60%. Some of them are terrible, not even 1%. But none of them are perfect. To get that, you've got to work on yourself. Put yourself a curriculum you want your child to follow. And a lot of the girls are asking me, we're thinking about homeschooling our children, and how do we start? You start homeschooling your children the same way. Don't tell them out of school. Start on a weekend or on a holiday break just by starting to teach them yourself. Or starting to add supplementary work. You know, I don't want you to learn like this, I want you to learn like this. Start look on the internet, homeschooling websites and forums. Even if you're not going to take your children out of school, it doesn't matter. But you start getting control. You start saying, instead of I'm just following what the school teaches, now I'm the one setting what my children do. Now that has another half, because sometimes the school is going to ruin your plan. And they're going to give your child some stuff that you don't want to give your child. So that's okay, you have to just challenge it. You have to say, what did you learn in school today? Well, we learned that we were walking for monkeys. There was a monkey and then it became a little bit less of a bed monkey and then more straight and then it became a human being. You have to be able to challenge that. You're going to find it. Look, if they go to any school apart from a very Islamic school, you're going to get told that in biology. You have to challenge it. You have to research yourself. Say, come on, okay, let's sit down, let's research this. Is there any proof for this? Is there any scientific evidence that this is true? Find that there's not at all. Not even a bit, not even a fossil. Nothing. But instead what we find is a lot of clever pictures and a lot of clever marketing to make people believe that this is the truth. To challenge our kids, to teach our children. So I think it's incredibly important that when I say take control, I mean really take control. Put yourself down the curriculum. Now what I did with my kids, I decided to homeschool my eldest child at the beginning. And he was in the same school in England for a year. He was homeschooled in the beginning of his life, then he went to the same school for 1 year. And I saw the effect of that school upon him. In his prayers, in his friends, in his deen. And he was only maybe I don't know, was he 7 years old, something like that, I can't remember, but approximately 6 years old, 7 years old, and I saw it in him. So I said, I'm going to have to make a change. But I can't go to school every one day. I can't just take him out of school and let them just, all the kids go mad in the house and then let him graduate with no grades. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take control. So I'm going to start putting down a curriculum I'm going to follow. I quite like the British national curriculum. It's okay. It has a lot of, if you get rid of all that stuff that's Islamic incompatible, the curriculum is good. So I said, I'm going to base it on this curriculum. I'm going to base his education on the British national curriculum. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading this curriculum. And I'm going to start ticking the boxes when he knows it or he doesn't know it. And I'm going to start challenging the areas that they're teaching that I feel are not compatible with Islam. And I'm going to supplement this curriculum with Arabic and Islamic studies. And I'm going to get a curriculum for those. And then you start, and you've got these papers in front of you, it says, child is capable of counting to 10, tick. Child is capable of counting to 10 in twos, tick. Child is capable of counting backwards in twos. Like this, it's a curriculum, it has points. And you start going through it. And someone might say, well, my school teaches this, what's the point? But the point is you have control. Now you are aware of what your school is teaching and you're able to find the things which are not Islamic and you're able to challenge them and you're able to add to them and you're able to mold your child and direct your child to what you want them to do. After a while, I tried teaching him on the weekends. And then we tried teaching him on the holidays, the summer holidays where we had a big gap. Just give him, a couple of hours a day, sitting down. We made a separate area of the house because if you try and teach them in the same way that they are taught, they're just running around in the home, jumping off the sofas and whatever. You have to make a little area, okay, it's school time, with a little whiteboard, sit them down, okay, we're going to learn basic things. Adding some Arabic in there, some Islamic studies in there. Again, if you don't know how to do it, you've got two options. Number one, you go online and you find somebody who does, and you learn from that. Number two, and this is the best way, is that you start to learn yourself and teach your children at the same time. You say, I don't know Arabic. No problem, I'll give you a wonderful suggestion. Why don't you and your child learn Arabic together at home? So you sit down like you're the teacher with the whiteboard, or maybe your child knows more Arabic than you. So they sit with the whiteboard and you sit the student with the pen and the paper, you say, "Hey, teacher, there's something else that happens when you do this. And that is that the relationship between you and your child blossoms and flowers. It becomes like a strong relationship because you're spending time together." Someone says, "But I work 12 hours a day, no problem. Homeschooling doesn't have to have doesn't have to start at 9 a.m. and finish at 5. No issue. Start with 1 hour after Fajr. Start with after Isha when you get back home. Just do half an hour a day. Because you're not taking them out of school yet. That's a decision some people will make. And I recommend it to every person who is able to do it. The best decision I ever made with my child's education, by the grace of Allah and His mercy, is taking them out of school and putting them into homeschool. But it's hard, it's not for everyone. How do you start? You start by taking control. Even when they're in school, you've got control of what they're learning, what they're studying, their homework, how they're progressing. And this deals with the issue of content. In how we do it, number one, you set your own content, and if you go online, there are literally thousands of websites. I used to go on a couple, I used to pay like $5 a month and get all worksheets, curriculum, classroom lessons, lesson plans, everything printed, ready to go. The only thing I know was the printing. And then start taking control of this, of my kids' education. Then when it came to my daughter, she was homeschooled from the beginning because we already had the experience with one. But even if you don't homeschool them, at least even if you just spend an hour or 2 hours number one, Islamically, you're going to see that your child improves massively, inshallah. Number two, academically, and this is where the shock is, academically, you will see your child improve. You want your child to get top of the class results? Sit with your child and help them to get them. Instead of just bringing a tutor or bringing somebody in or getting someone to do it, you go do it yourself. And you'll see academically your child starts to improve. Because they're getting one-to-one tuition from the best teacher that every child can have. The teacher that Allah created with that relationship, the parent-child relationship. So you're teaching your children. Even, supplementing their Islamic education. You don't know you're learning with them. And then you're challenging the content which is un-Islamic from their school. And again, you see some schools are better than others, and you'll make the decision that because my child is doing so well academically, I can afford to move them from the school which is less Islamic to a school which is more Islamic and they have less high quality academic education in terms of secular studies as well as quality. But because I'm teaching my child myself, I can supplement that with them. So now I'm moving my child from a school which is amazing in math and English and terrible in Islamic studies to one that is mediocre in math and English but really good in Islamic studies because I'm taking care of the math and English at home. Or I've got people involved who are doing it. You could pool together resources. A couple of parents together who want to do the same thing, and again you pool your resources together, you help each other, you work together, and you start to challenge the things that are wrong with the education your children are receiving from outside. There's no one answer. The answer is not for everybody to homeschool their children. But the answer is simply for everyone to take control. And then from there, some of you decide to homeschool your children. But the quality, the grades, the certificates, do we really give that much for the dunya? I want you to just give you a simple example why that argument about school is cannot be true. Just think of 10 really famous entrepreneurs. You can think of Zuckerberg, you can think of Bill Gates, you can think just rattle them off. Look at the state of their education. Half of them are university college dropouts. Didn't complete their college work. Don't have that piece of paper that you're supposed to read the hobby. You can't even get a job as a cleaner without it. Except that you can make like X number of billion pounds without it. You have to remember the reality is the only thing that's stopping you is your own glass ceiling that you put for yourself. Where you say, oh, my child can't achieve this without this. My child will not get a job without this school's education. My child will not get this role without money, without university. My child. Start thinking outside the box. Start thinking about the way that these non-Muslims who, let's be honest, there is no good example of them. There is nothing good about them. But I'm just giving you an example of how this concept that you have to have X to get Y is completely flawed. The worst one or the funniest one that I hear is, for the children, is that I hear that if I don't send my children to school, they won't develop socially. I can't even say that argument out loud. It's the most ridiculous statement in the world. And there's a very nice article by a homeschooling, he's a non-Muslim guy who homeschools his kids. He just shows a picture of about 15 college kids drinking alcohol from a bum. And then underneath he writes the argument, if I don't send my students to school, they will not develop socially. Really? And if children never develop socially until they went to school, what did people do for the last, 5,000 years? Nobody developed socially until they sent them to formal schools, and they will not be able to eat, they will not be able to drink, they will not be able to speak. Of course not. Everything they learn from this is just how to be naughty and how to be disrespectful and how to swear and how to lie and that's what they learn socially. So this brings us to the topic of the environment. Because we dealt with the issue of the context, and now we have to deal with the issue of the environment. But I just want to emphasize this point, that if you're going to succeed with your child's education, you have to be willing to challenge the status quo. You have to be willing to say, what if I did it another way? If you're just going to follow everyone else like a sheep, then to be honest, you're going to end up with the same result as everybody else. You have to be willing to say, what if I didn't send my child to school? What if I moved my child to Islamic school? What if I taught my child English at home? What if I didn't have a tutor and instead I spent 2 hours a week with my children? What if my children didn't go to university and instead I taught them a practical skill? I'm not saying you should do that, I'm just saying that you should stop thinking like everybody else thinks and start thinking outside of the box. What if I did this different? What if I didn't follow what everybody else does? And you'll be surprised at the answers you might find. You might sit like on the other side of the fence sitting there thinking, Wallahi, I should have done this ages ago. But you have to be willing to ask yourself questions that other people don't ask themselves. And of course that obviously means that all the relatives, the family are saying you're insane. You know, why are you doing this? You know, your child needs to do this and needs to do that. You need to think outside the box. You need to challenge the norm and the stereotypes. And think about doing things differently. And only then, with the tawfiq of Allah, you'll be able to solve this problem that destroys so many people. So we solved the issue of the country. Now we have the issue of the environment. Now some people might rightly make the argument that the environment is something you can never really get away from, and there's nowhere that has a perfect environment, and that's true. Not even when you're homeschooling your kids, even though this is the best environment because you're in complete control, but still they have siblings, they have cousins, they have neighbors, they have, you still got to understand that the environment is going to influence your children. And I've got a few solutions to this. Number one, put the odds in their favor, give them the best possible opportunity with the help of Allah. You know, some people, they put their children into the worst possible environment, and then they say, why is it that my child went astray? Why is it that my child has left Islam? Why is it that my child doesn't pray? You still put your child in that environment. You can't, you have to choose the best of the available options. Okay, if you say that homeschooling is not an option for me, no problem, I agree with you. It's not an option for most people. But you still have a choice of what environment you put your children in. You have a choice of what school. You have a choice of, sort of the ethics and the morals and the kind of environment that your kids in, what friends they hang around with outside of school. You have a choice. So start by putting them in the best environment that you can manage. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Fear Allah as much as you can. Put your children in the best environment you can manage. You can't manage homeschooling, no problem. Put them in the best Islamic school that you can manage. You can't manage an Islamic school, there's literally nothing around you. Put them in the best non-Islamic school that you can find. Don't put them in the worst one and say, well, everyone has to endure hardship. Everyone has to, in the world of Buddha, everyone has to mix with people who don't follow Islam, so you may as well put them in now. This is a very, very foolish argument. Give them the best that you can to stop them. Number two, we mentioned this before, don't be naive. Don't presume because they're homeschooled, they're not doing something haram, or because they are in a good Islamic school, they're not doing something haram. Don't be naive. Our children are using anything. Wallahi, and I consider myself to be very good with technology. Like, I'm up to date with technology. But still, these kids are using like hundreds of apps that I've never heard of. You know, means of chatting, phrases, communication, means of sending messages that, like, it's just like foreign to you. So you have to be now on the ball. You have to be aware of how your children are communicating, what they're using, what they're doing. Now it's better to do this with their cooperation. It's better than spying on them. Sometimes you have to be, I'm not saying you have to spy, but you have to be aware, you have to be on the ball, you have to be sharp. But at the same time, it's good to tell them, look, you know, you use this computer, I'm gonna check through. You know, I check through your internet history from time to time. Don't mind. It's not that I don't trust you, but I don't want to give the shaitan a way for you to go astray. So, you know, from time to time, I'm going to check what you're watching, I'm going to check what you're looking at, I'm going to check your internet history. And just, you know, like, don't be honest with them. You know, like, I'm not telling you I'm not doing something secret. I'm just telling you that this is what we're going to do. Have the computer and the phone in the living room where everybody can see what's being done. Because again, most of the problems I've seen on the technology side of the kids, the environment and stuff, has been through, they've got access to a tablet in their bedroom, they've got access to a tablet, you know, places where they can be alone. This is a problem. So you don't be naive. Don't presume because you know the way they used to do things, used to pass paper notes in class, things have gone from there. There are a lot of things that our kids use to communicate, things that our kids get exposed to. Again, with regard to, let's call it immorality, not nice things, haram, sort of fahisha, moral, filthy things. Don't presume because my kid is only 11, they haven't seen anything. Don't presume because my kid doesn't stare at women in the street, he hasn't seen anything. It starts at that age, and then when they reach puberty, it gets worse. So again, don't be naive about the environment. Presume the worst, and then find a solution for it. Number 3, with regard to the environment, control the environments that you do have some authority over. So you might not have authority over who your child mixes with at school, but you definitely have authority over who your child mixes with at home. So if you can't change their friends at school, you can definitely influence their friends at home. When you do that, then you start to see that this can have a knock-on effect in the environment at school. Some parents, again, they're very defeatist. They turn around and they say, I can't control who my children are friends with at school, so I'm not going to do it at home. Let them go out with who they want at home, let them go out with who they want at school. If you can't achieve 100%, at least achieve 50, at least achieve 60. So control, influence what you can. The next point, with regard to the environment, talk to your children about what they experience and be honest with them. Talk to them about what you used to experience at school. Talk to them when you get into a situation which is not very good. Maybe you're out in the road, there's something inappropriate on a billboard. You know, like, use the issue to sort of say, oh, stop for a while. We should lower our gaze to these kinds of things, and this is not right for a Muslim. You know, look at how this is. I bet you see this kind of stuff in school, and you open the issue with them. Because if you don't start talking to them, you're never going to know what the problem really is and what the situation is. Encourage them to be honest and teach them the value of fearing Allah rather than fearing you. Too many parents bring their children up to fear them. They bring their children up to fear them. Meaning, don't do that, your dad might catch you. Don't do that, your mom might see. Don't do that, your dad might beat you up. But that's teaching them to fear you and not teaching them to fear Allah. So it's extremely important that you try to encourage them with tarbiyah, with teaching, with Islam, to fear Allah, not to fear you. And that's not an easy thing to do. That's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do, but it should be an aspiration that you have. That it's not like, don't do that, your dad might catch you. Don't do that, Allah might punish you. And it's also down to the role model or the example you set for your kids. The example you set for your kids. And that is that when they see you, do they see you fearing Allah? Or are you like, don't tell your mom, she might see you? If you're teaching your kids, like that, don't tell your mom about this, don't tell your mom about that, because she might get angry with me. You're teaching your kids to fear people instead of Allah. That's an important point. And another point which I think is extremely important about the environment is that if you feel that you don't have that relationship with your children, put your children in contact with people who do. Might be a family member, like your brother maybe, their uncle, or their Islamic teacher, or whatever. But you give your children people they can confide in and talk to. So the hope is that even if they don't talk to you about the problem, they're going to talk to someone else with good advice. And you can say that to me. You can say, look, if you feel you ever can't talk to me, just go and see Tim. For example, you can go and talk to him. It's okay. If you feel you can't talk to me, you can talk to him. And you won't have any issues. It's alright. So you give them other options. It might be an uncle, it might be an Islamic center, it might be. But you give them options. And I think the feeling that you see with regard to this issue of education is well. Make the best of what you have. Yes, it's not great that our schools are very weak in Islam. It's not great that our schools are often giving the opposite idea of Islam to our children. It's not great that we can't take them out of school. It's not great that we can't control their friends. But there's lots that we can do. Not everything in this talk will work for everybody. Some of you will listen and say, that suggestion, I can't do it. And I'm okay with that. I don't want you to think that 100%. I just want you to start thinking about what you can do. And what you'll see is, if you see the glass is half full instead of half empty, you're going to see there's lots of things you can do to improve the situation. There's lots of very small changes you can make which will instantly improve. And you'll also see the situation of what the importance of planning. When do you start planning? As soon as you know you're going to have a child. As soon as your wife comes back and says, I think I'm pregnant. That's the time to start planning. Right? How are we going to educate our children? What schools are we going to send them to? How are we going to mitigate some of these negative issues that exist? Lots and lots of things that you can do. I'm a big fan of homeschool, a massive fan of homeschool. But I also know that it's not for everyone. Not everybody can do it. But I know that everybody can take control of what their children are learning. Everyone can start to ask their kids and talk to them and challenge what they learn. But to do that, you've got to spend time with them. Everybody can be more of an active parent instead of a passive parent. Someone who is involved in what their kids are doing every day. Someone who talks to them. Someone who knows what they're watching, what they're listening to, and who they're talking to. If you can't control their friends at school, you control their friends at home. And through this process, when you're striving for the sake of Allah, Allah helps, opens a door for you to be able to do things that you wouldn't imagine. And so this is, I guess, a topic which I feel is extremely important. I don't just think it's important for us here in UAE. I think it's important for every single Muslim in the world. Because all of us, more or less, the vast majority of us have children, or are thinking of having children, or trying to have children. And it's a problem in almost next door to my house with amazing teachers and amazing children, where nobody does anything except that which pleases Allah. This utopia is not going to happen. So you can't keep waiting for it. It's going to be maybe next year, maybe next year. Make the best of what you have. Plan for it, think about it. Listen to your children. Spend time with them. Learn from them. Teach them. And ultimately, take control. So that you're able to influence your child's education in the way that you influence other things, like their personality, like their likes and their dislikes, and their character and their manners. Just like you're influenced with these, you're also influenced with their education. And like I said, I believe if you do it, you will find your children excel academically. And I have two evidences for that. One is an ayah from the Quran, and one is experience. Experience tells us that when you are more involved in your child's education and you're more hands-on, the child does academically gets better grades. But Allah Azza wa Jalla told us this in the Quran, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Have taqwa of Allah and Allah will teach you. Allah will teach you everything you need in this dunya and akhirah. To do that, all you have to do is fear Allah. So you have to fear Allah with regard to your children's education, so Allah will teach them what will benefit them. And then you'll see that your children will grow up to be everything you dreamed of in the dunya, as well as being an investment for you in the akhirah, and that walad salih, a pious child that continues to earn good deeds for you, even after you pass away. So these are just some thoughts. It's a big topic. I think it's something that we have to deal with. And I hope it's something that will inspire people to go on and think for themselves and plan for themselves and find their own ways. I mean, the last thing I just conclude with is that, I'm sitting here as if I've got everything right with my child's education, but not at all. I'm constantly changing. I'm constantly changing the way I teach, the things I teach them, whether I do Islamic studies or not, the timings, the books, the methods, whether they go to like school or whatever it is, or whatever, whether I teach them home. Things are always changing. Life is a process of learning, always learning. But until you take control and try to do it, you will not be able to benefit and learn and to be able to actually affect those changes that you want. And I hope this lecture has answered some of the questions that the brothers have been asking about how we get started in homeschooling. I hope that has also answered some of those questions as well. And Allah Azza wa Jalla was also I think we'll take a few questions from the group because it might be, I don't know we do it for finite perfection, but here I think this topic might work well. People might have some interesting questions.
We've talked about issue of certificates for the environment that we live in today, where you can only progress when you have certain things in place, right? So for example, I'll just bring this random example. If your child wants to be a pilot, it's not possible, as far as I know, for any parent to teach the techniques of such a skill. He would have to go through an institutional type of learning to reach that particular level. So how do you reconcile that?
It's a really good question. So the brother said, I'm just going to summarize. He said, if you want your child, if your child wants to become a pilot, it's not possible to do that except with learning through some sort of institution. Like, for example, if you want to be a doctor, you can't be a doctor unless you go to medical school, right? It's impossible. There are a few answers to that. First thing, I'm going to ask the question, which, the first question that popped in my mind is, why do I want my child to become a pilot? Or a doctor for that matter? Like, I'm serious, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying, question. I want my child to become a doctor. Why? Even the child wants. Even if the child wants, why? Like, do we really you want to encourage this? Is it the best job for my child to have? That's the first question. It's worth asking. Because sometimes people, they will come back and you like this. Television. So ask the question. The second thing is, do you really need to go through the process that you think you need to go through? Now again, I agree, sometimes you do. But not always. Sometimes people say, well, you want to be a pilot, you have to do this. That's not always true. There are other ways to research on how have other people done it. Are there other ways of doing it? Are there ways of doing it that don't involve the same things that you think they do? Number 3, even if they have to go to that institution, and that's cool, but at least look at how you can minimize the problems that you're going to have. So for example, I'm not against my children going to university if that's ultimately what they want to do. But I don't need to send them to school right now, because the way the British system works is that you get the same certificate from homeschooling as you get from school. There's no difference between the two certificates. So for me, what's the most important years of their life? The early years, and they say the early years, not the late years. I'm not so worried what he does at 18 as I'm worried what he does at 8. Most parents are the other way around. But if you look at the psychology of it from the point of view of child psychology, you should be more worried about your child at 8 than 18. By 18, and you finish, and nothing, and the topic is sealed. They're adult and they're responsible for themselves. So I'm going to also look at, do I need to follow that path? Because I'm very wary of people telling me I have to do this to do that. Like traditionally people said you have to, for example, do this to do this. I question, find out. Also, if you have to send to an institution, how can you get the best out of it? How can you reduce the harms and increase the good? For example, could they go part-time to this university, or could they study from a distance where they don't have to be there every day mixing with the people and picking up the haram? For example, are there some institutions that are better than others? Could they learn to be a pilot in the UAE, which might be better than America, for example? Or could they learn in a place in America which is better than another place in America? For example, you start questioning, you start asking, instead of, just taking it on board. And you start looking at how I can get the best out of that situation. And then about the skills of being a pilot, for example. Okay, flying a plane is something very specific, but it's based on maths. It's based on, that you have to have good quality. You have to have good skills in maths, you have to have good skills in various, branches of it, probably geometry and all of these other things. And you have to be able to problem solve, you have to be able to work under pressure, and all of these other things that they say you have to be able to be a pilot. Those are things you can teach your children in the same methods that we'll be talking about. You can teach them to be amazing mathematicians, you can teach them to be amazing at working under pressure, you can teach them amazing hand-eye coordination. I don't know if that's what you need to be a pilot, but that's what you can teach them. So maybe the final step, they need to go to one of these institutions and universities, but ultimately it's up to you to sort of decide how to get there, and to ask as many questions as possible along the way, and to try to get the best out of the situation possible along the way. And I honestly advise on this topic, and the reason why I was asking that question, why they want that or you want them to be that, is because I believe that the best way to mold your child's career is to start with the career itself. Too many people, they say, comes to child's university age, and they say to the child, you should go to accountancy, because you've got a good grade in maths and it's really good. Accountancy is really good. You should be an accountant. And then they become an accountant, and they come to my office and they say, I can't find a halal job. All of it's riba. And I'm like, I'm just calculating riba for people. And I have to deal with loans, and I have to apply for loans from the bank, and I have to do these audits of loans for companies, and it's all riba. Sometimes the problem is, in terms of career advice, that we pick the wrong career in the first place. We pick a career that involves lots of harm, but involves some prestige. And yet there are careers that pay better, that give a better salary, which involve far less harm. I'm not saying it's wrong to be an accountant, I'm just giving an example of something I came across recently. But you can apply to anything. Somebody says, you know, I want my child to be a doctor. Why? Doctors work ridiculously long hours for what is comparatively low pay for lots and lots and lots of years, often have to compromise on their ibadah, often struggle with regards to issues of marriage because of the hours that they work and raising a family and all these other issues, and then at the end of their life they earn their money after they progress to a very high thing. Really? You want your children to do that? Why? Because it's got prestige, because you know, auntie and uncle are going to think that mashallah, you know, that's why. No, it's not why. Why do you do that? Like, you have to ask yourself that question. And sometimes the answer is surprising. Sometimes you start with a career and go backwards and you think, subhanAllah, I want my child to do this. I want my child to be an entrepreneur, for example, because this has the best chance of them having a halal income in a way that it's suitable for them, for example. And you work backwards, you start thinking, well, what skills do they need? And then you start thinking, well, maybe they don't need a college degree, they need lots of experience. And you work backwards. And sometimes you'll be surprised at the results you get when you do that. Yes, there are certain core skills like English and maths and science. These are certain core skills in every field. You need it in almost every field. But after that, when your child talks about career, be sensible. Yes, it's about how much you earn, but it's also about the risk of being halal. Work backwards. Think about what it is that you want your children to do and be a bit intelligent about it.
The things you said are quite interesting for boys. But when you have 4 girls, for example, and especially when the girls start getting to 8, 9 years old, they need to learn about menstruation and how to do feminine activities. Don't you think the mother is best to even start the whole schooling so that it gets really close to the mother?
Definitely. I think with regard to boys and girls, both boys and girls need both parents. I think it's a misconception that girls need their mother and boys need their father. I think boys and girls need both parents. Men and women have very different qualities. Natural. And those qualities are needed. The child takes different things from different people. So when I talk about you getting involved, I'm talking about the sisters as well as the brothers. I'm talking about everybody. You know, with my kids, it's a collaborative effort. 90% my wife and 10%. No, it's a collaborative effort between me and my wife, for the boys and for the girls. Because the girls, you're right, the boys need certain things, but also the girls need certain things. The girls start learning about things relating to women. And what do we want from our boys and girls? We want our boys to be boys and our girls to be girls. We're not into this whole gender equality thing. We want boys to be boys and girls to be girls. And boys to be successful and girls to be successful. And our boys to be educated and our girls to be educated. And yes, the mother and the father both play a huge role in that. Getting the mother involved and seeing the mother, spending time with the mother, learning from the mother, but also the girls learning from the father as well. They learn those qualities. Didn't Fatima learn so much from the Prophet ﷺ. They used to say nobody resembled the Prophet ﷺ more than Fatima. In the way that she sat, in the way that she walked, in the way that she spoke. Nobody resembled the Prophet ﷺ more than Fatima. So again, it's the lesson that from the mom's side, from the dad's side, having both parents involved, it's super important.
We actually have thought a lot about homeschooling and we mentioned also immediately like that either are doing it or they are doing it or doing it partially like this. We found most of them actually are coming from the Europe/US. And we work on the principles more. When they asked us, why don't you just jump into it? One of the main answers we give them is that we're going into the Middle East, we have
Lebanon, Syria, or Jordan. They are in other countries that have their politics there. And we find ourselves falling into that and saying, look, at the end, he doesn't have this degree from police side, not really for college. He's not progressive life, he have problems. Even when it comes to marriage, when it comes to social status, when it comes to everything. And that's, again, theoretical thinking, but that's the thing that we're facing. How can you advise us against such thoughts?
So the brother gave a very, very, very good comment, and I totally agree with you. He said, a lot of what we're saying, we find that people pushing this to be people from the West. Because it's accepted, like homeschooling, etc. It's accepted in, British culture, in most of the states in the US, in Canada. This is like, okay, so it's not normal, but it's like accepted. Whereas people born in the Middle East, you're living in a country, you're holding a passport from a country that doesn't recognize this way. So we feel that if we bring our children up like this, it's going to lead to so many negative things, and we get negative thoughts. How do we combat those things? I think there's two answers. First of all, there are three answers. The first one, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever has taqwa of Allah, Allah will make for him a way. We have to believe that. Wallah, if you sit here and say, I can't do it, you will never do it. You have to believe that it's not like, what's the difference between us and those big people we mentioned from the US, those businessmen? We believe that our success in life comes from Allah. Those people, they say, I did it from my own hands. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. So we have to believe that if we try our best, even if we can't do it perfectly, maybe we cannot take our kids out of school because, like you said, our government doesn't recognize this certificate. But at least we have to try our best. That's the first one. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Number two, I think we have to be creative. Because when you look at even homeschooling in the West, there were some trailblazers, there were some people who did this before everybody else. And for them it was difficult too. But they were the people who said about this thing, we're going to find a way, we're going to look, we're going to end. You know, like an example, not taking things for granted. Okay, my child has to have a certificate from school, they have to have a certificate from university. Okay. But let's look at other ideas and options, and let's look at what other people are doing to get some inspiration. And the third thing is, just because your child has to go to school, I'm not saying that every child has to be taken out of school. In fact, I believe that for the majority of Muslims, they cannot take their children out of school. They cannot, it's impossible. So for these people, what do we say? Make the best of what you have. Partially homeschool them, at least take care of the Islamic side, until Allah Azza wa Jalla makes a way for you. Until Allah Azza wa Jalla makes a way for you out of the problem that you are in. And that's not a perfect answer. That's only a half an answer. But it's a start. Believe that Allah will make for you a way if you fear. Look for opportunities and don't just resign yourself to whatever else is going on. Look for opportunities, because you'll be shocked how many opportunities there are if you look for them. And number three, even if you can't do 100%, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Fear Allah as much as you can. If you can't do 100%, okay, so do 50%. If you can't do 50%, do 20%. If you can't do 20%, do 10%. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. And I really believe that if we all took care of our children's education, even if we sent them to the worst state school in the world, it would still be better than if we were in a state of unawareness and we were just leaving them and we don't know what they're studying, we don't know how to take control of it. So sometimes it is very hard. And that's why I'm not one of those people who believes that everybody has to homeschool their children, but I just believe that everybody has to take control, to do their best to be able to get the most out of the circumstances they're in, and
websites you have experienced as per your experience, number one. And number two, their certificates, will they be accepted by the government or the institutes over here?
Okay, the way these websites work, and maybe I'm usually I'll just post on the system. But these websites, the way they work is, they just provide you a career. They don't certify your children. They don't give them a grade. The grades come from the country that you are in. And now, in the UK, you can submit your child as an external candidate. That means that basically your child sits the exam in the school, like other children do, but they don't attend the school. In the Middle East, this is sometimes called intisab. But intisab has a lesser standard in many places in the Middle East. And you consider it's like a very low standard. And in Madrid, the one who attends the school gets a high quality certificate. But in the UK, the US, and other countries, there's no difference between the certificate that you get. So you teach your child yourself, and then you send them to their school for the exams. Now, I'm not an expert on how this works for every country. I know the UK because that's like where I'm from. But I don't know how it works for other countries. Some countries it's not possible. Some countries might accept foreign students as an external candidate. So for example, check it out. Is it possible for me to send my child, let's say with a British passport, to a school in the US to do this exam? I don't know, it's possible. So we're thinking about, or a school in Sweden, or a school in France, or a school, these are the questions you have to ask. These websites, they provide you curriculum, they provide you worksheets, they provide you lesson plans, they teach you how to teach your children, but they don't examine your children and they don't give them certificates. You have to do that through the country that you are either from, or the country that you're living in, or the country, a third-party country which accepts foreign students as, whatever you can do.
Islam. I want to know if it's appropriate to start homeschooling and go on until a certain age or a certain grade and then put them into a normal curriculum. The question is not from the acceptability of the school or the curriculum that they would accept the student at a later stage, but is it appropriate to experiment something like this?
Very, very good question. Is it appropriate to homeschool my child and then later on put them into a regular school? For me, I'll be honest with you, all options are open. If you're going to do this, you've got to have every option on the table. You can't be a person who says, look, I'm a purist, I homeschool my children, I don't send them to school, I don't give them exams, like I get some of these purist homeschoolers who want to, I don't give them exams, I don't want them to touch the education system, I don't want them. That's not practical in the world, especially if the brother is talking about in different countries. It's just not practical. So maybe if you say, look, my country, the last age they will accept my child to enter school is 12 years old. So I'm going to homeschool my child until then, and then put them in school at that time. That has dangers, of course, because you're taking them from a very good environment to a very bad one very quickly. But at the end of the day, every option has to be on the cards. For me, what I've learned from this, and from helping parents to do it, is I've learned there is no one answer. What fits you doesn't fit the brother, what fits him doesn't fit you. You have to keep every option on the table. And if that means you homeschool them for a year and send them to school for a year, if that's what works for your child, for your country, for your certificate that you want for them, then that's something that you can think about. It has its dangers. But then again, so does putting them in school from beginning to end also. So ultimately, for me, nothing is off. Nothing is off the table. Everything is option. Putting them in school and taking them out, putting them in, taking them out for a year and sending them to the Tahfiz, and then putting them back in. All of these are options, but you have to look at the pros and cons and what the positives and negatives might be, and then adjust them for your child and your circumstances. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. Guys, shall we get to the last question and you guys can capture on that? Yeah?
They're delaying their children. They're delaying. Someone proposes a government system, they say, why you want to get married? 20 years, they're delaying their children.
Marriage is a whole different topic. In terms of, we need a whole lecture to talk about it. But it's important that parents, I'll just make this comment, it's important that parents are in touch with their children. You know, sometimes our children, 20 years old, 22 years old, they need to get married. And they're telling you they need to get married, but you're not tuned into the signal until they end up doing something which is haram and it upsets you and it upsets them. So it's important with regards to your children that you're in tune. What are they experiencing? What are they feeling? What are they going through? Talk to them about marriage. You know, even if you can't, even if you feel my child is not suitable for them to marry now, maybe they're 16, 17, you think it's not suitable for them. But at least talk to them, say, you know what it is, I'm in favor of you getting married, really don't worry. Now it's a little bit better, but why don't we do this? You focus on this and you focus on your college. In your first year, second year, you'll start to look for someone for you. And suddenly the child thinks, okay, you know, it's not what I wanted. I wanted to marry at 17, but now my parents are telling me that they're going to start looking for me at 19. But still, you know, I can fast, I can wait, you know, they feel that there's some connection there with the parents. But the difficulty is when the parent says no. When you finish your PhD, and